Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is simple on the surface, but I think really transformative for anyone aiming to move from just correct English to genuinely natural and fluent English.
Hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into what might feel like a dusty foundational piece of grammar, the auxiliary verb or the helper verb, and showing you how it becomes this powerful, immediate conversational shortcut.
Yeah, and this is such a critical moment of transition for a sophisticated learner. For years, you're taught these very strict foundational rules. For instance, how to correctly form a negative sentence, something like, I haven't had dinner yet.
Right, structurally perfect.
It's perfect. But then you start listening, really listening to native speakers, whether they're in North America, the UK, and you notice they're constantly shortening and modifying these perfect structures in ways that seem to break the rules.
It really looks like rule breaking, and that's where the confusion comes in. You might think, wait, I was taught this is how it must be done, and now I'm hearing something totally different.
Yeah.
The truth is that those shortened forms aren't mistakes at all. They are highly advanced, universally accepted conversational shortcuts.
And they're the kind of techniques that often aren't explicitly taught in traditional lessons because, well, they rely so heavily on shared context and efficiency.
So our goal today is precision. We are going to reveal the two completely valid, sophisticated ways that auxiliary verbs are used conversationally.
We're moving beyond their primary job, telling time and defining action and showing how they become these essential tools for linguistic efficiency and for conveying subtle, crucial emotional context.
This is your shortcut to sounding natural. I mean, if you want your English to stop feeling like you're reciting from an audio textbook and start throwing like a real dynamic conversation, these are the aha moments we're going to unlock. We're moving beyond knowing what the rules are to understanding how fluent speakers strategically bend and simplify those rules for maximum conversational impact.
And that idea of strategic simplification is absolutely key. But before we can build the advanced structure, we have to, quickly and thoroughly reestablish the foundation.
Right.
Understanding their core function is really the only way to appreciate the power of their conversational shortcuts.
So let's start with the basics, and we'll express this slowly and clearly. Auxiliary verbs are the helper verbs.
Right.
They're always paired with another verb, the main action verb, in order to carry some kind of specific meaning or context.
And here's the initial distinction that I think often causes confusion. Take the verb to be, which includes am, is, are, was, were. This verb is pretty unique.
Why is that?
Because it can function both as a main verb and as a helper. So if you say, I am happy, am is the main verb. It's the only one there carrying the core meaning.
Okay, it stands alone.
It stands alone.
But if I say, I am eating dinner, now am is helping the main verb eating. It's defining the relationship of that action to time.
Yes. In that case, am has shifted roles. It's become the auxiliary verb. It needs a partner to help define the context of that partner's action.
And that context, that's its primary job, right?
Exactly. That context is precisely what we define as the primary grammatical function of auxiliaries, telling us about action and time. They are, effectively the timekeepers and action specifiers of the English language.
Okay, so let's break down the two main ways they do this foundational role. Let's start with function one, defining action, which I think immediately brings us to the continuous tenses.
Function one, defining action. The continuous tenses. Yes. So whenever you hear a verb ending in ing, it needs an auxiliary verb, a form of to be, to indicate that the action is continuous or in progress. For example, she is running a marathon.
Right. And if we take out the auxiliary is, we're just left with the phrase, she running a marathon.
Which is grammatically incomplete.
It sounds wrong immediately. The listener knows something is missing.
And what's missing is the definition of the movement in time. The combination of is plus running gives us the distinct idea of movement happening now or continuously.
This is the present continuous.
It is. The auxiliary verb is so vital because it specifies the nature of the action. Is it a single completed event or is it an ongoing process? Without that auxiliary, we lose that crucial temporal dimension.
So it's the auxiliary that tells us the action is active, in motion, and incomplete at that moment.
Precisely. That distinction completed versus in progress, it's critical. The auxiliary is doing all the heavy lifting to tell us about the state of the action itself.
It is. I like that analogy you used before. It's like painting a picture of time.
It is. The main verb gives you the subject, running, but the auxiliary tells you if the paint is dry completed or still wet, which means it's ongoing.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's move to function 2, which is arguably even more complex, defining the different phases of time itself, past, future, and the perfect tenses.
Function 2, defining time, past, future, perfect. And this is where auxiliaries become truly indispensable, because native English, without these helpers, only really has 2 core tenses, present and simple past.
Wow. Ooh.
All other timings have to be constructed using auxiliaries.
So let's start with the past tense and the auxiliary did. This one feels really subtle, but it's so powerful because the auxiliary is used purely for emphasis, right? Not necessity.
That's exactly right. If you say, I went to the meeting, that's the simple past. It is a neutral statement of fact.
Okay.
But we can combine the auxiliary did with the base form of the verb go, so you get, I did go to the meeting. Why would a speaker choose to add that extra word?
Because it's not just reporting history, it's conveying emotion and context. When I hear I did go, I immediately understand there was some doubt or maybe confusion or even a disagreement about whether that action happened.
Precisely. Let's just break down the emotional range this one small auxiliary carries. So first, correction. If someone incorrectly says, oh, you missed the meeting, you might respond, no, I did go. Here, did is correcting misinformation and affirming the past fact forcefully.
Right, it's a pushback.
It is. Or think about defensiveness or frustration. A teenager is asked again and again, did you clean your room yet? They might exasperatedly reply, I did clean it. The auxiliary did carries all the weight of that frustration, emphasizing that the action was indeed completed. Stop asking.
Yeah, I've heard that one. And then there's strong affirmation or surprise.
Right. Wow, that old car actually did start this morning. Here, did expresses the speaker's own surprise or relief at a successful past action that was totally unexpected.
So that slight shift from just reporting a fact to affirming a fact with all this emotional weight is entirely carried by that tiny little auxiliary verb did.
It's an immediate injection of nuance, and this is exactly why we need to spend time here. These small shifts are the hallmarks of advanced usage.
Okay, so now moving to the future tense. You said English constructs its future entirely with helpers.
It does, specifically with the modal type auxiliary will.
I will go, or she will arrive.
Yeah.
That will is indispensable. You can't take it out.
You can't. Without it, the sentence falls into the simple present or is just grammatically unsound. The auxiliary structure is the only mechanism for communicating reliable future time.
And finally, the octopus you mentioned, the perfect tense.
Yes. This relies on the auxiliary have or has, and it is absolutely essential because it shows a connection between the past and some other time. If I say, I finished the book, that action is a single, isolated event locked in the past.
Okay, done.
Oh, right.
Fine. Over.
But if you say, I have finished the book, the auxiliary have is linking that past action finishing the book to the present moment.
Exactly.
It means the consequence or the relevance of that action is still alive right now.
Precisely. Maybe the relevance is that you're now available to talk, or that you can lend the book to me, or that you're ready to start the next task. The auxiliary have creates that indispensable bridge. Without that bridge, the event is just isolated history. So, to summarize our foundation, the auxiliary verb's main job is functional grammar. To define action with the continuous tenses, and to define time with emphasis, the future, and these connecting perfect tenses.
They are the structural workhorses, the engine of English grammar.
Okay.
But now we move to where the engine gets turbocharged. They stop being just about structure, and they start being about conversational strategy.
And this is where we really get into the domain of fluent natural speech. The core problem this solves is, well, it's the tedium of repetition. If a beginner is asked a question, they often feel like they need to repeat the entire action and object just to be sure. But fluency demands speed. It demands conciseness.
From a linguistic economy standpoint, it's just wasteful to repeat information. The full context, the action, the time frame, the main verb is already fresh in the listener's mind. Fluent speakers instinctively eliminate redundancy.
So the foundational principle here is that the entire context of the desired answer is contained within the question itself.
Absolutely. The auxiliary verb is repurposed. It becomes a stand-in for the entire main verb phrase. Instead of repeating the full context, we just use the subject plus the auxiliary verb to affirm the truth of the statement.
And that signals to the listener, yes, the action you just asked about is true, without needing to say it all again.
You got it.
This is a major hurdle for learners, I think, because they're taught that a complete sentence needs a main verb. But here, the auxiliary is kind of replacing the main verb contextually.
It is. Let's look at the classic examples first, and then we can get into the complexity of modals and contractions.
Perfect.
Let's begin with the simple auxiliary do in the present tense. Question: do you like classical music?
Okay, so the beginner might say, yes, I do like classical music. And it's correct.
Technically correct.
But it halts the flow. It sounds prepared, like you're reading from an answer sheet.
Exactly. The natural, efficient answer is simply, yes, I do. The auxiliary do stands in for the entire phrase, like classical music. We say 4 words, and the listener experiences this immediate, natural dialogue.
Okay, we established in the last section that the auxiliary for the perfect tense is have. How does that work here?
Same principle. Question: have you seen the new sculpture downtown?
The short answer, yes, I have.
Yes, I have. In this case, have is the auxiliary, and it immediately stands in for the entire phrase, seen the new sculpture downtown. You are confirming the completion of that action relative to the present moment, all contained within those 3 short words.
That is instantaneous communication. The efficiency gain is enormous.
Now, let's tackle the negative side, because this is where contractions become incredibly important for natural speech. If the short answer is negative, it sounds really awkward if you don't contract the auxiliary verb with the negation.
Right. For instance, if the question is, are they coming to the party? The long negative answer is, no, they are not coming to the party.
Which is very unusual to hear.
It's formal, very strange.
The short, natural, and necessary negative answer is, no, they aren't, or no, they're not. Using that contraction isn't just speedier, it is a marker of natural fluency. We almost never separate the auxiliary and the negation in a negative short answer.
And here is a common learner mistake I've heard when dealing with the negative short answer. Confusing the auxiliary you need. So if the question is, have you had a coffee yet? A learner might mistakenly say, no, I didn't.
And that is a critical structural error because the question established the tense using the auxiliary have for the perfect tense. The answer has to match. The correct response is, no, I haven't.
So you have to align the auxiliary.
You must align the auxiliary of the response with the auxiliary of the question. Saying, I didn't, sounds like you were answering a different question, like, did you have a coffee earlier?
The rule remains ironclad. Match the auxiliary. If the question uses have, the answer uses have. If you fail to match, you break the linguistic handshake.
Exactly. The auxiliary used in the short answer must directly reference the tense and structure established by the question.
Okay, let's bring in the modals, which are incredibly common. Auxiliary verbs. Can, should, might, must.
Absolutely. Modals indicate necessity, possibility, ability, advice, and when they are used in a question, they carry that entire context.
So a question like, can he speak 3 languages?
Short answer: yes, he can. The can stands in for speak 3 languages.
Or should we leave soon?
Yes, we should. The should stands in for leave soon. It's the same mechanism.
So it shows the universality of it. Whether it's do for simple tense, have for perfect tense, or can for ability, the structure for the short affirmative answer is always subject plus auxiliary.
And that universality is what makes this a true shortcut. Once you understand the pattern, just use the same helper word, you can apply it to hundreds of sentence structures without needing to memorize every single example.
Wait, I have a question here, something I think learners genuinely struggle with. If the short answer is all about efficiency and relying on context, what happens when the context is ambiguous?
That's a brilliant question.
Does relying on the short form sometimes lead to confusion?
It can, and it highlights the boundary conditions of this shortcut. The short answer works perfectly when the context is immediate and unambiguous. However, if there is distance between the question and the answer, or if the question itself contains multiple possible interpretations, the short answer can fail.
Can you give us an example of where a short answer just wouldn't be enough?
Certainly. Imagine a discussion about a complicated work project. Someone asks, did you talk to Sarah or Mark about the budget?
Okay.
If you reply, I did, that is grammatically fine, but the listener is left hanging. Did you talk to Sarah or Mark? Or both? The simple I did is efficient, but it's contextually incomplete.
So fluency in that case requires you to sacrifice a little bit of efficiency for clarity.
Precisely. You would need to specify, I talked to Sarah, but not Mark. It's a mechanism best suited for binary affirmation or negation of a single, well-defined action. Mastering this means knowing when the efficiency gain is worth the potential loss of clarity.
Right. But for the majority of conversational exchanges,
For the vast majority, efficiency rules the day.
this segment has really laid out why the short answer is a fundamental pillar of fluent conversation. It's not lazy, it's smart.
It is a demonstration of confidence. You are signaling to the listener, I trust that we are both on the same page, and therefore, I do not need to waste your time repeating redundant information.
Okay, we've thoroughly explored efficiency and affirmation. Now, let's transition to the second, and I think perhaps even more fascinating, conversational use. Using grammar to carry immediate emotional weight.
This second use case is truly the pinnacle of advanced speaking because it moves grammar from the purely logical domain of structure, time, and action directly into the social and emotional domain of interaction.
We are taking a workhorse grammar component and turning it into a powerful social cue.
Exactly.
We are talking about using the auxiliary verb to signal immediate interest, shock, politeness, or even skepticism in response to a statement.
And to explain this clearly, we should anchor the concept using the term the source material introduced, feign. To feign means to give the appearance of or to politely pretend.
Okay.
When we use this auxiliary structure to feign interest, we are actively signaling engagement, often using an exclamation that structurally mimics a question.
So even if I already kind of knew the news being shared, using this structure is an act of polite manners.
It is.
It signals, I am actively engaged with your telling of this story, which is a gesture of profound conversational respect.
That's exactly right. It maintains rapport. And the structure used here is unique. It's the auxiliary verb plus pronoun or subject, often put at the beginning of the response as a standalone phrase, and it's almost always delivered with a powerful intonation.
Okay, let's analyze the structure and the emotional effect it creates. Maybe we can contrast it with a flat response.
Good idea. If someone tells you significant news, a neutral, matter-of-fact response might be a non-committal, that's good, or, oh, I see.
Right, which are factual, but they are flat, they're passive, and they kind of risk shutting down the conversation.
They do, but the auxiliary response like, is she? Or did he? Immediately shows elevated interest. It carries an intonation that says, this is news to me. Tell me more. It is an invitation to elaborate.
So you're basically taking the auxiliary verb and pronoun directly from the speaker's statement and flipping them.
You're flipping them and emphasizing them. You are interacting with the statement's grammatical DNA immediately.
Now we have to spend dedicated time on the role of intonation here, because without the right vocal inflection, the auxiliary response could be completely misinterpreted.
This is so critical. Intonation is the difference between genuine interest and sarcasm. When using this structure to show surprise or engagement, the pitch almost always rises steeply on the final word, which is usually the pronoun.
Okay, so give me an example.
Let's say the statement is, the company is moving its headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
The feigning surprise response would be, is it? With a high rising inflection on it.
Is it?
Right. That communicates, wow, I am shocked and interested, tell me why.
But if I keep the structure the same, is it, and I use a neutral or maybe a slightly downward inflection?
Then it completely changes. That downward inflection immediately turns it into a rhetorical question, or maybe even a challenge. It implies, oh, is it? I doubt that. Or is it really? That sounds suspicious.
Wow.
The structure is identical, but the inflection dictates the social meaning. The ability to control that inflection is a necessary component of this advanced shortcut.
That is truly fascinating. So you mean this tiny two-letter word is actually doing the heavy lifting of saying, I am totally floored by that information, or alternatively, I am skeptical of your claim.
Precisely. The auxiliary is the vehicle. The inflection is the fuel that drives the emotion. You get a massive emotional yield from minimal grammatical input.
Let's run through some diverse scenarios to show how this applies across different tenses and auxiliaries. We need to show that this is a universal mechanism.
Agreed. Let's start with the past continuous tense, using were. So the statement is, they were arguing about the merger all night.
The response,
Were they?
With that rising inflection.
Were they? Exactly. It signals, I didn't know that. Please give me the details of the argument. The auxiliary were confirms the ongoing action in the past while showing interest.
Okay, moving to the future tense, using will. Statement. She will probably resign after this meeting.
The response, she will, with a rising inflection. This expresses shock or concern about a future prediction.
Okay, and what about a modal auxiliary, like can?
This one is slightly more complex. Statement, even with his injury, he can still lift the entire weight.
The response could be, he can, but with an emphatic, slightly shocked downward inflection.
Yes. Because this is an affirmation of ability, the downward inflection actually emphasizes belief or amazement rather than skepticism. You are affirming and amplifying the original claim with surprise.
Wait, if I just repeat the auxiliary verb back, isn't that just mimicking? How do I ensure I'm conveying genuine surprise and not just sounding sarcastic or robotic, especially if I'm not a native speaker and I'm still trying to master inflection?
That is the core difficulty of mastering this technique. The fear of sounding robotic is valid. The key is twofold. First, always ensure the context is newsworthy.
Right.
If someone tells you the sky is blue and you reply, it is, you will sound sarcastic because the statement is obvious.
Of course.
Second, if you are unsure of your inflection, you must couple the auxiliary response with a direct follow-up question.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. If someone says the new office complex has been delayed, instead of risking a flat robotic, it has, you immediately follow up, it has, by how long?
Okay. The follow-up question validates the interest that the auxiliary structure initiated.
It confirms that your use of the auxiliary was a genuine bid for engagement. It's a practical and powerful tactic. Use the auxiliary to signal attention, and use the follow-up question to confirm genuine interest.
The auxiliary response is designed to accelerate rapport.
Yes, you are signaling that you are not just waiting for your turn to speak, you are actively engaging with their statement right now. It is a critical engagement mechanism that makes you a much more rewarding conversational partner.
Let's discuss one more important scenario. The use of do or did in this expressive way. We saw earlier that doded is used for emphasis. How does it work for the feign or surprise response?
This is usually deployed as a strong affirmation combined with surprise, often reinforcing a second statement. So, statement, the package finally arrived this morning.
The response could be, it did. I thought they had lost it entirely.
Exactly. The it did functions as an exclamation of relief and affirmation. The speaker is confirming and expressing surprise at the same time.
What's so powerful about all these structures are they, she will, it did, is that they require absolutely no complex vocabulary. You are performing advanced social and emotional communication using only the simplest structural components of the sentence you just heard.
It's the manipulation of structure for social necessity. The auxiliary verb, which normally sits quietly in the middle of a sentence, is forced to the front or given a sudden emphasis, carrying the spotlight of emotion and the heavy responsibility of conveying shock or engagement.
This is grammar as a communication strategy, not as rigid rules in a binder.
It is. And this is essential for our learner audience. If you are currently responding to news with long, descriptive statements like, that is very interesting news about the marriage, you are grammatically safe, but you are not conversational.
Right.
To sound natural and engaging, you must embrace the economy and the emotional power of the auxiliary structure.
Because the conversational flow depends on this brevity and this emotional immediacy. If you're constantly processing and formulating a complex response, the dialogue stalls.
It does. The ability to instantly deploy issue, or they did, allows the conversation to accelerate immediately into the details of the news. It is a difference between a speaker who uses language and a speaker who manages the conversation, and the latter is always more engaging.
We have thoroughly explored both sides of this coin. The efficiency gained through affirmation and short answers, and the social engagement gained through the emotional feign. Let's bring it all back together now. So, we have completed this incredibly detailed deep dive into the conversational shortcuts afforded by auxiliary verbs. We moved past the core grammatical functions, defining action and time, and we identified two powerful tactics that immediately elevate your speech to fluent, natural levels.
First, we analyze the role of the auxiliary, plus the subject for efficient short answers and affirmation. This is all about reducing redundancy in speech. The auxiliary stands in for the entire already established verb phrase, confirming the truth of the statement without tedious repetition.
Will you be there? I will. It's clean, quick, and confident. Second, And maybe most importantly, we explored using the auxiliary plus the pronoun to signal polite interest or surprise. The feign. We saw how critical intonation is here, transforming a simple structural reversal into a nuanced emotional reaction that ensures you are an active, engaged, and socially sophisticated conversational partner.
They've hired a new CEO, have they? That's interesting.
Exactly.
This analysis shows that language mastery is not about rigid adherence to beginner rules, but about understanding how fluent speakers strategically manipulate these simple structures for speed, efficiency, and social connectivity every single day.
And by mastering the conversational roles of these helper verbs, you have just acquired a key tool for achieving natural speech. It's about achieving fluency, not through overwhelming complexity, but through strategic and deliberate simplicity.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull on. The mastery of these unassuming helper verbs proves a major point. Some of the most powerful tools in language aren't complex vocabulary or elaborate sentence structures, but subtle, deliberate shifts in the placement and use of the simplest structural components. So if auxiliary verbs can carry this much weight, this much conversational and emotional nuance, what other foundational grammatical structures, perhaps even prepositions or articles, might be hiding equally powerful conversational shortcuts in plain sight?
Something for you to observe, listen for, and notice those hidden rules of natural conversation.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this knowledge accelerates your journey to true conversational fluency. We'll talk to you next time.